Welcome to the video. I'm going to be walking you through the setup process of your Metropolis Arc Contact template for Cubase Pro 11. Before we start though, a quick disclaimer. Unfortunately, I will not be able to offer preloaded Contact templates or preloaded Sign Player templates for Orchestral Tools product. It's been kindly requested by Orchestral Tools not to do this in order to prevent any possible security risks to my own personal serials or their libraries. Now that we have that out of the way, let's configure our outputs for Contact before loading any patches. The first thing we need to do is create an instrument track with Contact loaded on. Next, we're going to expand Contact by going to the Edit Instrument view. And from here, we need to make sure our outputs are showing. To the right of the cog icon, click on this and you will see a drop-down menu. Just make sure outputs are checked. To create our audio configurations, we need to click on the plus icon next to outputs. And here we will have a little pop-up dialog. Contact has a total of 64 mono audio channels, which can be configured in various different ways. The default setting is 2 mono channels will be summed to create 1 stereo channel in the mixer here. If we wanted to create a mono channel, we can change the value of number of channels to 1, and that means we'll be creating 1 mono channel in the mixer. We can have a maximum of 32 stereo channels because this would utilize all 64 mono channels. But for the template, we only want 16 stereo channels. And then the number of channels, 2. From the sound card / host output, select the first channel. We're going to leave ascending output assignment checked. Delete existing channels before creating new ones. We're going to check that box. And then finally, we're also going to check the make this your default configuration. So every time you load an instance of Contact after doing this, it will always have by default the 16 stereo outputs. We're going to click OK, but you may find if you expand the outputs for Contact, it doesn't show you the 16 stereo outputs that we've just created. That's because we now need to unload Contact and reload it back in. And then when we expand the audio outputs in Cubase, you'll then see the 16 stereo channels. Once this has been done, you can remove the instrument track and we can move on to the next stage, which is importing patches into the 20 instances of Contact that are used in this template. Now that we have set up Contact, let's go ahead and start loading patches into the 20 instances of Contact for this template. I'm going to start with the key switch folder. Inside this folder, you will see a single instrument track. Connected to this instrument track are 15 MIDI tracks. These are going to be used to control the various patches that are loaded into our single instance of Contact. It's important to note when loading the patches into Contact, they must follow the same order of the template and of the library. Let's go to Edit Instrument to open up Contact. Next, navigate to the Multi folder inside of Metropolis Arc 1. Here we can see the list of all of the available key switch instruments. Select the first instrument, then hold Shift and select the last. Now we're going to drag and drop this selection into the rack. Once loaded, we will need to perform a batch function in order to connect all of these patches to their own audio channel in the Cubase mixer. To minimize the view, click this icon at the top right next to Auxiliary. Now let's do our batch connect function by selecting Batch Configuration, scrolling to Batch Functions, and then from here, clicking on Split Instruments routed to first output channel to individual outputs. Contact will now remove all of the audio channels and assign one to each one of the patches which are loaded into the rack. It will then connect those to the outputs that have already been created in the Cubase mixer. So if I start playing on the keys, you will see everything syncs up perfectly. I'm going to repeat the process one more time for the bassoons, then I will continue to load everything else for the rest of the library. Expanding bassoons, we go to Edit Instrument, navigate to the Single Articulations folder, Orchestra, then Bassoons. Shift select the patches, drag and drop them into the rack. Once loaded, minimize the view, then do the batch function to connect them to the outputs. I'm going to go ahead and load the rest of the patches into the template. I will speed up the video, but if you want to skip to the next section, feel free to do so. Once you have completed loading all of the patches into the 20 instances of Contact, save the project. Next, let's take a look at what the template has to offer.